This is part 2 of building progressive web apps using the new version of Laravel and Angular. So I have the same application running, and I'm running Artisan Serve and Gulp Watch. So today we're going to talk about service worker registration. That's why we need to go into the new application tab in Chrome DevTools, and this is where you can see the manifest and service workers. So if I go to this app, and the first time I go there, you can see that the service worker is registering. And there's also a toast that tells me that this app is ready for offline use. Now, if I refresh the page, it's going to learn faster because everything is being served from the service worker, but I can then manually delete it and then refresh again, and we'll be back to the first scenario. So we will see the app is ready for offline use once again. Now, if I refresh the page, we're going to see that for subsequent requests, most of the resources are being served from cache or from the service worker. So we're going to learn how to do this and how to customize it for our own app. And to do that, we're going to use a tool called SW Precache. And SW Precache is a node module that generates service worker code that will pre-cache specific resources. Now, you don't have to set up all of this because it has already been set up for you. But let me show you first how service worker code looks like. It's very low level, so no one really likes to write his own service worker code, especially that if you do something wrong, it might cause you to always serve cached versions. So this is why we'll be using SW Precache. So if you go to the gulp file, you'll notice that the last task that we're calling is SW Precache. And this is a custom task that we're defining in this repository. Now you only need to go to precacheconfig.json at the root directory and look for this static file globs. So this JSON file actually allows you to, in this particular field, allows you to specify which files you would need to pre-cache. In this scenario, we're pre-caching the fonts, the JavaScript, the CSS, and all the images inside public image. So now you can notice if I save this file, and Gulp will automatically notice this and run the generate service worker task. So every time you change this precache config, there's no need to restart Gulp. It will automatically pick up the changes and generate the new service worker.js file. So if you go to the API documentation, you can specify multiple configurations. For example, you can specify for every endpoint to have a network first strategy, which means it should reach the network first, and then if it is successful, it will store it in the cache. And then you can also have cache first, which is always get it from the cache, and you've got fastest, cache only, network only, etc. So these caching strategies, you can use them when using SW Toolbox. And you can also specify network timeout seconds. Now we're going to be using SW Toolbox inside SW Precache. So I'm going back to SW Precache and looking for the runtime caching. So this JSON key actually allows us to specify the runtime caching. And if you scroll down, we're doing some kind of runtime caching for some URLs. So for example, we have a cache first strategy for the landing page and for Google Web Fonts and the GitHub button. Now let's go into resources, views, and index.play.php, the main starting point of our application. So we've got the app shell, so we're loading the critical styles first, and then we've got the app shell, which is going to disappear when Angular loads, and then we've got the app view. And let's go to this component inside the Angular folder, then app, components. So the HTML for it is just calling 3 UI router views. And inside the JavaScript, this is where we're registering the service worker, and So by just doing this, we're registering the service worker, and we're also checking for newer versions. If there's a new version, we'll show a toast that there's a new version of the site available. And this is where we're also showing that the app is ready for offline use. So you can customize all of this just in this file. So now let's go to the command line and generate a new page called posts and also a new component called all posts. And inside the UI router, we're going to define a new page as kind of a new state by just duplicating the previous one. Inside the header, we're going to update the link for posts to use UI router and then point to this new page. And we're also going to do this on the landing page. So we've got two buttons that just open this page. This page will just have a heading that says we are listing all posts, and then from here we're going to call the all posts component that we created. But then because we created new files and folders, we need to restart gulp command. So that's the new post page, but we're still not doing anything inside the component. So let's go back to the component called all posts and then call the API that we created last time. So we're going to inject the API service that we have and then use it to call the endpoint, which is /get posts. That's it from the previous video. And then after we're done, we're going to store all the posts returned by this as a property this.posts. I've got some sample card design from the Angular material documentation that I'm going to use here, and just add an ng repeat for it so we can loop over all the posts and then show the URL and the content. Reload the page, you can see that we are loading the posts and it's taking up around 100 milliseconds. So what we're going to try now is to add this to our SW toolbox configuration and tell the browser to cache this into the service worker. This of course depends on the strategy you would like to know. Of course this depends on your strategy, but let's say you're sure that the posts are not updating frequently, then you can decide to cache them, and then you can maybe decide to cache them for a few days or a few weeks. So that's one way to do it. We just need to specify the URL pattern /API/posts and then the strategy. So the caching strategy here is going to be cache first, but you can choose another one. And I'm going to uncheck bypass the network because we want to simulate having service workers. We don't want to always go and get the latest stuff. And you can see that this is the code generated by the toolbox. So now if I refresh the first time, we'll have the new service worker code, and you can see it's still getting the data from the API. But then when I refresh again, you can see that the post is being loaded from the service worker, which is really nice if you know that this kind of posts are not updating frequently. You can also have other strategies like network first or cache only, fastest, all of the things that we saw in SW Toolbox. You can find documentation for all these features on the official documentation by going to the new version. Then on the left we have a section for progressive web apps. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as usual, don't forget to subscribe, and you can follow me on GitHub on this link.